Exactly. Okay, it looks like we have a good group of folks here to get started. So we're going to kick off the afternoon sessions here. This first panel that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be moderating, and it's tech that is powering brokers and agents' business. So far we've been focused on the aspect of data and data coming through an MLS and data as a consistent RESO standard. But what we want to focus on in this session here is data as it pertains to powering a broker's business. So who are your subscribers, the MLS members, and what benefits are they being able to pull out of the MLS that's set up? So with that being said, I want to introduce our panelists. So the first, Martin Mucha, who is the CEO and co-founder of Igluu MLS. Atta Hassan, who is the CTO and co-founder of ListTrac. Giselle Abadi, CTO and co-founder of Realtyna. And Akhilesh Mujumdar, co-founder and CEO of StyleDud. A little bit, yeah. So we've heard from a few of you, but what I would like to do is start off is to give each of you a couple minutes to kind of explain who you are, where you're from, what you do, and what your business is. So Giselle, why don't you start?
I start.
Ladies
Okay.
first.
I'm with Realtyna. I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you in this past 2 days. And basically, for this panel, in Realtyna, our main focus over the past 15 years was providing real estate agents and brokers with services, to connect them to their MLS so they can benefit from the IDX data on their website. This has been our core business, and I think that's very related to today's panel.
Great, thank you. Martin, how about you?
Great, good afternoon. Our core business is really building an MLS system. And I've had a great fortune working with Carlos Gras, and Igluu is a joint venture, between a KBC Group, which is the large Belgian bank, and this is a sister company of Status Data Systems, and we have been working together for a long time, and we've been able to benefit a lot from all the experience from some of the large systems and of the most innovative ones in Canada, like in Toronto Real Estate Board, for example. And we are bringing that know-how to Europe, and we are developing a first MLS system in the Czech Republic currently with the local association. And we are very thankful, and we are really excited about the RESO, which we have been implementing for the past 2 years. And I think there's a lot to come.
Perfect. Great, thank you. Akhilesh, how about you?
Hi, our core business is virtual staging of empty rooms. But as we started from there and looked at all the associated problems in marketing and how this entire structure works, it opened up an entire Pandora's box for us. And we realized that we don't need to just stop at virtually staging photos. We need to unleash the power of AI to make sure that data is actually extracted at source the right way, and therefore enables monetization and development of premium derivative products, much like the 6.0 Sol that you mentioned earlier today. And so that's the mission that we've been on. We are in this mission, our mentors and investors are CRMLS and Venture MLS, and it really helps us develop ingrained understanding of the market, which is very important because we are relative outsiders, not only to real estate, but to both US and Europe, being from India. And so that really helps.
Great, thank you. Atta, how about you?
Hello, hello. My name is Atta Hassan. I'm the co-founder and CTO of ListTrac. I like to equate ListTrac to kind of the Google Analytics of the real estate space. So it provides online analytics related to a broker or agent's listing content as they distribute it across the internet. Our customers are most of the major MLSs throughout North America. We're now going into Canada. We have inroads into Mexico, into the Omni MLS, which is throughout South America. And we believe as the adoption of the MLS standards of data and distribution of data are adopted throughout the world, that it would be obviously a great addition to those markets also.
Perfect. So, Ata, I'm going to stay with you. How does the MLS come into play as it pertains to broker and agent tools?
Okay. So the MLS, I think, as we've heard probably numerous times over the last today and yesterday, really one of the primary benefits of the MLS is the aggregation of that data and the application of rules and standards, the normalization of the data, et cetera. And so that's obviously one of the primary benefits of the MLS. But really one of the, just as large of a benefit is the distribution of that data and the innovation that it allows for technology companies to develop tools and offerings for brokers and agents to improve the productivity and efficiency within their business. You know, you can think of how that data can be leveraged across the entire, you know, from the lead capture all the way to post-close, where the data comes into play. If you think about lead capture, for instance, how do agents and brokers capture leads? Well, predominantly through real estate websites, right? And so, of course, the distribution of data from the MLSs through RESO standards, RESO API, if you're legacy, you still use RETs, et cetera. The lead capture, when you're leveraging that data, allows for a greater breadth of data, accuracy of data, and it, to some extent, levels the playing field for these brokers and agents, giving them an option to compete up against some of the larger sites. So that's in the lead capture. But then once you have that lead, or if you have the lead, let's say inside the MLS system itself, you have a potential buyer, which in the US is represented by an agent. In the European markets, maybe not so much so. But in the US, it's very common for the buyer's agent to set up what they call a safe search alert. So they go into the MLS platform, they key in the criteria related to that particular prospect of theirs, and in real time, that prospective buyer receives information related to the properties that meet their criteria. So that also, you know, is very beneficial. Then when you go beyond that, of course, if you're looking to represent a prospective seller, one of the key things with the prospective seller is, how do I price the property? How do I price that listing? So in the US, they have a thing called the CMA, which is an acronym for the Competitive Market Analysis, which is a report essentially that leverages, again, MLS data and public record data, actually, allowing them to predict what a good price for that property would be. They use off-market data, historical data, and they use the current data pricing that's available through the MLS to better assess and price that property within the CMA. So that's like another area. But so the general point is, within all this data is feeding into these tools, but the data is being sourced from the MLS, but it's going into these broker tools, which vendors in the technology space, everybody here on this board, up here on this panel, leverages this data. You know, so that's what, and then, but the other thing that the MLS does is they help evangelize these products and services for brokers, because every MLS, I think out there, they'll say, they have a technology committee, which I think we've heard, they get pitched over and over by different technology companies. We'd love you to incorporate our technology into the offering to your members. They do an initial vet to see if it's worthwhile. They go through multiple committees, multiple boards, and they make an assessment of what technology they think is going to be most beneficial to their membership. And in some cases, they'll offer that as a member benefit, where they'll subsidize, either cover the cost altogether, or in some cases, they'll subsidize the cost to reduce it for their members. But again, what it does is it opens up that, again, levels the playing field for brokers and agents to have access to some of the tools that maybe as a smaller broker or an agent, they did not previously have access to. So it helps them in terms of improving their productivity and efficiency within their business. And then I'd say the last thing I would say about this, though, is we can't forget about the MLS system itself. So we have, within the MLS, you have the MLS organization, but then you also have the MLS system. The providers are like CoreLogic, Black Knight, Flex MLS, Rapatoni, all these providers out there. And these systems on themselves, also, you think about the large national portals. In the US, it's Zillow and Realtor and Homes, et cetera. And the purpose of these portals is for exposure, right? To help people sell their listings in a more efficient and effective manner. But with our platform, ListTrac, what we do is we monitor the activity across these different platforms, whether it's inside the MLS system, whether it's inside a broker or an agent site, or whether it's inside these large national portals. And what we've discovered is that in many markets, the MLS system actually has the most exposure out of all those. Everybody talks about the Zillows and the Realtors and the Homes.com, but what we discovered in many markets, the MLS system provides the greatest exposure to help, expose that listing to potential buyers or sellers, depending upon what they're doing.
Really well put. All of those points, really well put. Akhilesh, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I kind of want you to go off of Ata's points, but also in our prep call, you brought up a really good point that MLSs too often are just data repositories, but they should be data engines. And you kind of previewed that a little bit in your presentation earlier, but can you expand upon that and how you see that, especially in the context of an AI?
Sure. I said earlier today that real estate search is where dreams go to die. And no offense to my mentors and friends from MLSs, but as an outsider, when I look at it, I think the MLS listing input process is where data goes to die. So I look at any of these MLS listing input forms. The last one I looked at, there were 1,152 data fields and attributes that needed to be filled in. These are anything from what kind of appliances are there, what kind of flooring is there, and so on and so forth. The agent obviously has been to site, knows all of this, but how many agents do you think would actually sit down and fill that when they're busy trying to get that listing out on the market as soon as possible? And that's perhaps why very few of those fields are mandatory fields. And Atta mentioned about CMAs. Now, the whole genesis of CMAs is to be able to compare the attributes of one property with other properties that have known data points on insurance, on lending, and therefore be able to determine its actual value. How will that ever even happen if those data fields are not filled in? And so the MLS has built that entire wonderful foundation as well as a solid superstructure for that data to be filled in, but it's like an empty house. No one is actually going and living there. And what really needs to happen, I mean, it's difficult for anyone to say at this time, but what generative AI allows us to do is to make it super easy and fun for the agents to just dump in 40, 50 photos, even if casually, unprofessionally shot, into a system, and the system automatically generates out, automatically populates all these fields, provides a human-like context to the agent that, look, I believe there are these appliances in the kitchen as shown in these photos. You can verify, say yes or no, take human feedback. It also provides the MLS a means to actually verify the data that the agent has filled in, which otherwise is very difficult if it has to be done manually every time. And I believe that really is MLS 6.0, where instead of acting as a data reservoir, the MLS actually starts extracting, generating data and disseminating it like an engine to not only participants within the real estate industry, but also the associated home improvement, lending, insurance kind of industry. So that's what we are referring to earlier.
Really well put. And I think there's so much potential there moving forward. So really excited to see what you and StyleDod will do in the future. So perfect. So Martin, over to you. Thank you, Giselle. You and I were just talking outside, and you are in a very unique position of anyone at this conference here. Is you have brought one of the first, if not the first, RESO certified MLSs to Europe and put it into play. Tell me about that experience, what you had to go through, how did you bring that forward, how did you get people to buy into it?
So it was a very interesting. So I'll tell you a quick story. I worked with Carlos for 5 years, and we met this lady. I was born in the Czech Republic, lived in New York for close to 10 years, and she was from KBC Bank, which is a very large Belgian bank. For those from the US, it's roughly the size of a Capital One. So it's a significant European bank. And they said, we really like this technology and this system. It would be very interesting to try to bring it to Europe. Would you be interested? And I said, well, I don't know, what does it mean? I said, no, we would invest. You will come here, it would be great. I said, well, it was in 2020, and we said, let's try it. So we got to Czech Republic, and obviously I was very naive. Said, well, we take this American system and we just bring it here. It would be easy. Recognized that's not what happened. And we basically spent 2 years. First, we decided for the RESO standard because we know it was built for 25 years in making, and it's the future, and it's the right standard. It's like electricity, you just want to plug in and play. So we saw RESO is the future. We took that, and then we recognized there's all these legal compliance work. And I think Magda, who's sitting here from White & Case, one of our law firms, spent an enormous amount of time analyzing the European laws to make sure this platform will be also compliant here. And it's very different of doing business here. It all looks similar, but it's really not. And we then work with the association, actually, the Czech association, with Jan Borůvka, who is now also president of CEPI. And we said, we need the MLS rules. So we don't have any MLS rules. It's like, well, if you want MLS, you need MLS rules. So we have to develop it. And we spent a year and a half with the 20 largest brokerages putting together a rules that will be acceptable by the market, by everyone, which we were able to achieve. And then there are no buyer services, not much in Europe. So, well, how do we create the buyer services here? How we get there? And we kind of, create some features around the MLS. How can the agent who will work with the buyer provide additional functionality just to the buyer? And we came up with a great idea. How about we just don't have a public portal? Public portals are fine, but somebody has to go there, and it's a lot of work and a lot of money. So let's not do it for now. But how about we have and sort of invite on the MLS that the listings will be in the MLS exclusively in the system, and people have to be invited to see additional listings before they get published to public portals. And we were able to agree to that. So now the brokerages start sending listings exclusively into the MLS. They work with the broker who will show them this listing. So there's additional value. Now start making sense. Now it's like, that's a good way to go. So we did that, and I said, well, since we are 50% owned by the bank, what does a buyer need? Well, a mortgage. It's not bad. I said, well, how about we digitize the mortgage process? And in Europe, you have something called bank ID. You have a digital identity here, which is very advanced. So we are able today to authenticate the user. So we, by then, doing a KYC AML process, which is great. And we are able, we will be able next year, within 8 minutes, to pre-approve, not pre-qualify, pre-approve the user for a mortgage with 98% accuracy on the spot. And there will be a lot of additional value for the real estate broker, because potential additional revenues to be made, also for the real estate community. Depending on the country, we also learn each country is different. So this is kind of the one part, the business, the legal part. Then came the technical part, which is, again, fairly unique, because we have all these providers, and it's extremely fragmented. You have a small European countries, except some large European countries, but most of them are very small. And they have 8, 10, 20 technology providers. So, you don't have the budget to do anything. And the technologies that are used in the Czech Republic are, some in cases, older than are the people working for us today. I was very old. And we had to come up with an access. How do we take all this fragmented, not standardized data and put them and map them to the RESO standard? How do we allow the local players to be able to import the listing from their systems into the MLS, and while providing them with API, so all API-based today, while building the additional MLS rules, like keeping it just in the MLS, for example, how much commission. And if you don't share commission, one thing people don't like, they don't like to share. So they don't like to share what they already have. So they said, well, collect your own fee from the buyer. So we have come up with all these little tweaks to make it possible and make it not conflicting for the brokers. And then comes the public portal. So basically, you can export it to the public portals. But here is one problem. If you just have an MLS, you need to bring the people. So we are the customers. So we are leveraging the CRM systems of the brokerages who can invite the customers into the MLS because they have a large databases. So we do that. And the other cool thing we are currently doing, and we are really doing everything through APIs today, we are connecting the CRM system of the bank. And just that you know, in the Czech Republic, the CSOB has a 4.2 million customers, and there are 10.5 million people in the country. So it's fairly significant CRM system. So we'll be able to start offering buyer services and real estate services directly through the bank. So next year you will come to the bank, sit down, said I want to buy, sell, rent house, and they said we can connect you with a real estate broker directly from the retail branch. So we are doing a lot of innovation in that space, but then looking to the future, I think there will be a lot of use cases, and actually Saul spoke beautifully about the use of the data, because the banks are interested, insurances are interested in that data. So give you an example, valuation services. The Czech Republic has a fully digital land registry, so we consume those data for valuation purposes. But those data are roughly 3 months old. They are 3 months behind what's currently happening. So you can use that type of data for valuation services, including AI image recognition and doing more qualitative approach to that. Then what's happening in Europe moving forward are two interesting things. Obviously, energy efficiency, so use of that type of data. And the last one will be a renovation. There's so much money going into that field, and I believe that the real estate brokers really have the power to be part in the transaction and participate in those transactions. So this is just kind of an overview what we have learned so far.
One really neat thing here, and I guess this is a critique of the U.S. market, if you want to say that, but it sounds like the system that you're building is inching closer and closer to an all-in-one platform transaction where all the services are done through one single portal or one single system, as opposed to having 20 or 30 different touch points in a real estate transaction. That's something very unique, and I think something, as we are collaborating at this conference, something we should look at in the U.S. and take back of how we can incorporate these aspects into one system.
Maybe I will just add to that. So since we run through APIs, we are opening it also to other companies, so they no longer need to build all of that. We provide them the APIs; they pay for it usually, but you can connect additional CRM systems. You can connect, additional analytical tools. The beauty of the RESO standard, if you are a small country like the Czech Republic or another smaller country, actually I can even say it here, since the two board members of Slovak Association are sitting here, we are expanding together to Slovakia and bringing also RESO standard there. We are fully committed to that. It has additional beauty to that, because with that standard, if you are such a small country and you are one of you running a large companies, you don't really care much about Czech Republic. It's too much work. It's a too little reward. But with this one data standard, you can plug in and play, basically, with minor adjustments to the languages.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be done there.
Perfect. That is great insight. And congratulations. It's not an easy feat to get that off the ground. So
Thank you.
Giselle, over to you. We know Realtyna is a broker tool right now, and you help kind of publicize internal data to consumers. Talk about that process in a RESO market versus a non-RESO market, and how does Realtyna help a broker with that?
Well, fortunately, right now, RESO non-market of MLS does not that much exist.
Yeah.
So we had a very tough time before RESO because there are certain brokers that they need data from 3-4 MLSs at the same time, even up to some portals. They want all the MLSs, and just imagine mapping all this data and keeping them updated. And every once in a while, an MLS changes a field, and you have to do redo that mapping, and it was a lot of work. But now that we have RESO, we have a unified feed. We cover 96% of the US market and Canada. We connect to the MLSs, and all of the data is on our platform. And via this MLS router platform that we built that I just showcased before, it's super fast. You can just get real-time access to MLS data without any cost, because even with the old technology, even if you had one feed, the APIs basically, they were mainly used for data sync, meaning that you had to download the data to these secondary websites, which is a tough process. It needs a powerful hosting and a lot of maintenance, and this data needed to be synced all the time. So it's a very tough technical process. But with the API, now the data resides in a central repository, and you just need to connect the API to your website, and with a very light shell, it can run any query that any search listing visit that you want to do. It's in milliseconds, and even it's faster than most portals. So with this technology, I can say that it democratizes the high tech for average brokers and agents who are not tech savvy, but they can have access to data in a light speed.
Great, that's incredible, and I think that's such an underutilized value of the MLS that a lot of folks don't think about. They think of it as before an MLS exists, as something that comes in that regulates the industry, as opposed to something that whatever you put into it, you're going to get exponential value out of it on the back end. So I want to put you guys on the spot really quick, and we have 5 minutes left. So Martin, as you kind of illustrated, it's not easy to build an MLS from scratch. It's not easy to shift people's minds. So in 1 minute or less, and everyone will have a chance at this, what's your pitch to why you need to go set up an MLS and why you need to have consistent data standards?
That's a good question. Why to do it? I think you generally need to have one place where all the data are consistent, they're organized, because there's so much you can do. If you don't have an MLS, if you don't have one central system, it's extremely fragmented, and you will be very limited in the future. And I think your relevance as a real estate broker will be limited as so many new technologies are coming. And if you have one standard, it all works nicely together. You will be able to do things which are not possible today. And I think in life seems to be there is only one guarantee, which is called change. And I think this really helps us to make a change in the right direction.
Well put. Akhilesh, over to you.
Well, in a single line, an MLS platform that provides centralized tools to its agents, members, can reduce their marketing budgets by 40% flat. We as PropTech startups, marketing vendors, we spend a lot of money on customer acquisition. Who do you think actually pays for that? It's all baked in our prices. It's the agent who actually pays for that. If the MLS evolves, and I have seen that in CRMLS, in some of the leading MLSs, that they want to create a system where they act as the provider of tools to agents, that truly democratizes an agent's access to this and reduces the budget that has to be spent out of their pockets drastically.
Well put. Atta?
So there's a lot of ways we can answer this question, right? So there's some standard ways. So I'm going to just...
I sprung an easy one on you.
I'm going to come to it from a different angle. I'm going to say just because an MLS system adds liquidity to the market. People have touched upon that, but adding liquidity to the market, the ability to sell properties more quickly, adding economic growth to each of these countries, I think is probably one of the biggest benefits that people don't talk about as much, but the ability to provide a market where it's easy for people to exchange properties and to turn around those properties, and to then in turn, which yields trickle down into the entire economy for home improvement, financial verticals, et cetera. So I'd say the liquidity that the MLS introduces to the marketplace is probably one of the things that are overlooked.
I love that. Great answer. Giselle.
I actually want to say that in other parts of the world, they started already late to create an MLS system, and that's why now it's much more difficult. But I want to touch on what Jeff Turner said yesterday, that the change is coming, and if you don't adapt to the change, it will take over you, and it will pass you by. So it's of course it's not easy, but it's certainly doable, and you should embrace the change as it is for AI and MLS. And I think right now with the tools and technologies is much easier than, and with the standards basically, all the hardships that existed in the US over the past 50 years, then they recognize that they have to standardize. Everything is now available, so it's not that difficult to adopt that.
Yeah. Really well put, guys. And all of those answers, I think, if I could take liberty in summing it up, is an MLS should not be looked at as a hindrance in the market. It should not be looked at as a chore or a task to put your listing in there. It's something that allows you to iterate and innovate your business to better serve your clients. And having that done in a consolidated way, I think, to your point, Giselle, is the future. And it's the way to better serve consumers, better serve anybody who has a stake in the real estate industry. So really, really enjoyed this panel. I think this brought this into the perspective of the broker side of why it's important to have an MLS and more importantly, use the MLS. So really, really appreciate your insights. And if we could give them a round of applause, please. Okay, so our next panel is also an important one. Leave it on, please. Yeah. This one is from a little different perspective. We've talked about this from a data perspective. We talked about this from a broker perspective. One thing that we haven't really looked at is what does a government get out of it? What does a institution get out of this? What insights are they able to glean from a market? So with our next presentation, Mary Jo Cowan will moderate this, and I'll invite her up here to introduce her panelists. If we could give Mary Jo a round of applause, please.